things. I'm back with another director spotlight, this time for John Waters. In some ways, it's kind of weird that I like John Waters in the sense that his stuff is incredibly raunchy and wildly inappropriate. He was born in April of 1946 in Baltimore. Pretty much all of his films take place in Baltimore, and he really likes that city. I spent a month in Baltimore when I was 17 in the hottest summer they'd had in ages, and it was over 110 degrees with 100% humidity, and I decided I hate Baltimore. So it's really weird that I like John Waters' films. So his first two films, Eat Your Makeup and Mondo Trasho, which are in black and white, really, really low budget, more so than everything else, I haven't seen. But Multiple Maniacs from 1970, I saw in the theater for the first time last year, and I did not know what I was getting into. I had the smallest inkling because I'd seen other films of his, and it still was more inappropriate and perverse than I was expecting. And I guess it kind of made it worth it because right in the last act there was a giant lobster that I was not ready for, and it almost killed me laughing because I was so unprepared. His films very much focus on being trashy, on being extravagant, on being soapy and offensive, and you have to keep that in mind when you watch his stuff. Pink Flamingos from 1972 is one of his most infamous films. That's kind of what really made Divine kind of peak fame, and Divine worked in the majority of his earlier films. The special I Am Divine was a pretty good documentary. I thought it was interesting. But Pink Flamingos was super over the top. You have really bizarre characters competing to be the filthiest person alive, which in and of itself is an insane premise. So that one's a lot. Female Trouble from 1974, I can't really remember liking over much. I don't have any of his earlier films on disc because I just don't want to watch them again because they are a little bit of an assault on the senses, I guess. And Female Trouble was a little much. Desperate Living from 1977 kind of was a little rough for me. I had trouble with that one. I mean, it is a community of people that live in a trash empire, and it is a little bit much. I appreciate elevating Edith Massey to the levels that he did with the characters he created for her, which are incredibly over the top. He usually worked with a lot of the same actors on no-budget scripts, usually non-rated films. They're too offensive for the MPAA, I guess. Very underground. Polyester was the first one of his films to receive an R rating in 1981, and this one very much caters to the soap opera kind of crowd. I did used to have this one on DVD, and it did come with a scratch and sniff card. I didn't dare use it, admittedly. I don't think I wanted that kind of assault on the senses when the film itself existed. The fact that Divine had a crush on Tab Hunter, and then Tab Hunter played a character he would have played 20 years earlier in his career was very funny to me. It was slightly less offensive than everything else before it. Hairspray from 1988 is his only PG-rated film, and I was very surprised by the fact that it's genuinely, after a fashion, good. I was also incredibly surprised that Debbie Harry was in it, which I was not ready for. It does cover some rather interesting issues around race and fat phobia, which was a surprise, so it did have some interesting good messages in there. I saw pieces of the remake with John Travolta, just pieces of it, so I'm not going to talk about that one because I don't remember it terribly well, but the original from 1988 was surprisingly good, and I definitely would recommend it. It's significantly less offensive than his other films as well. I do have some of his films on DVD. I was pretty much introduced to him with Crybaby when I was in high school. This one's a lot of fun. It is over the top ridiculous. It was, I don't know. I didn't like it the first time because I didn't know what to expect. All of his films do have this very particular type of campiness that is an acquired taste. I liked this when I was a teenager because I liked Johnny Depp, and he does not in fact sing in this. He is dubbed, so for the people that claim that he sang before Sweeney Todd. They're incorrect. He did not sing on this. It was a dub. It is still a very fun ride, even if it is trash. His next one, Serial Mom. I find this one to be horrifyingly funny in a really weird way. It is as over-the-top satirically ridiculous as you would expect. This is Matthew Lillard's first film. It makes a lot of references to the video rental craze of the horror film in the 90s and this kind of corruption of the purity of suburbia. A lot of his have a lot to do with kind of poking fun of this purity culture stuff and kind of peeling it back and poking it with sharp sticks. And this one's definitely no exception. By having Kathleen Turner as the titular serial mom, she really did well in the role. It's funny when you consider her earlier roles in the 80s, like Who Framed Roger Rabbit and Romancing the Stone, and you get this, and it is very, very strange. I get a kick out of that one quite a bit. Pecker from 1998, this one's kind of an odd one because it's surprisingly wholesome for something that is also a little bit inappropriate. I'm not particularly fond of Edward Furlong. I find him to be very, very annoying, but he still did quite well as the photographer, Pecker, and he kind of shows like the weird parts of Baltimore that he loves, and then he gets sucked into the avant-garde, super pretentious New York art crowd, and then it kind of tears that whole thing down the whole time. I thought that was very fun. So it's curiously cute and does have a couple of slightly larger names in Christina Ricci and Edward Furlong. My favorite film of his is actually Cecil B. Demented from 2000. This one is really amusing to me, mostly because it's kind of catering to the independent cinema craze. And you have a bunch of these no-budget filmmakers that are just totally full gonzo and getting into this project that doesn't necessarily make any sense. And I find it to be very funny and very over the top. And it does feature a lot of film references. Early on in John Waters' career, one film critic, I cannot for the life remember who, did call him Cecil B. Demented as a joke because of how offensive his films typically are. And he liked that title enough, he ended up using it for one of his films. His pretty much most recent film, he also did like a Kids Bop version of Pink Flamingos that I haven't seen. A Dirty Shame from 2004 I didn't find enjoyable because even though it was as over-the-top, offensive, loud, crass, blah, 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 as everything else he'd done, it kind of, the sparkle had been worn off or something. Like, it just fell flat on its face, and I really didn't think it was funny. And it was offensive, but it wasn't amusing, and it wasn't endearing. It was just kind of like, oh, come on, please stop. So, A Dirty Shame I didn't think was particularly worth it. He's had random cameos and appearances and other things. He has a very distinctive appearance. And he does have a lot of really random quotes. And I have an appreciation for John Waters on the whole as a filmmaker because he does take this whole, I'm going to be in your face and loud and unapologetic. You should celebrate the fact that nobody's perfect, that whole thing. I think one of my favorite cameos of his is in Excision from 2012, in which he plays a priest, and Tracy Lords plays a very buttoned-up suburban mom, so it is a very peculiar film that he didn't direct, but he did have a cameo in that I will never stop finding funny. If you like filth or avant-garde, weird, nonsense, trash cinema, I can't even begin. Give John Waters a shot. Till next time, Darklings.